thanks a lot. Really appreciate for attending this live session of session number 3 of season 2. And what we are going to cover today, we will look into the details of JavaScript development. And this particular, you can say, workshop is divided in 2 parts. In this particular session, we will do the basic concept, means how to write, means what is the concept about the JavaScripting, and what are the, you can say, pros and cons, and the first level of the, you can say, information. Then in the later stage, in the session number 4, we will covering advanced topic. Okay. So little bit about the housekeeping stuff. As you know, this session will be recorded and will be posted as soon as it is compiled. And really appreciate for your time and the cooperation. If you have any question, please feel free to interrupt us. You can use the question answer section by the time if you have a question, or even though you can also use the chat. All of our content is shared already on OneDrive as well as on the YouTube. You can refer all the previously recorded sessions. And if you have any question, please feel free to let us know about your queries. So now I'm handing over to Mr. Wahaj.
Sure thing. I'll share my screen. In the last session, we discussed the business rules, how we can implement the business rules to control some of the logics on a particular form. We learned that there are a lot we can do with the business rules, and that should be our preferred choice whenever we can. But again, business rules comes with some specific set of features that we can use. For instance, we can, if I just count it, we can control a field's visibility. We can control a field's requirement level, whether it is required or not, optional or required. I can control I can set a field's value. Again, I can, show a notification or an error on a field. Yeah, I think that's all we have, right? Yeah, visibility, setting up a value, and checking the requirement. And of course, we can apply conditions. But when we have to do more than that, we have to come to the JavaScript. So Microsoft has provided a client API for model-driven apps. Or in other words, Dynamics 365 customer engagement. Because in actual, again, I'm repeating this again and again, Dynamics 365 customer engagement apps are in fact are model-driven apps. So if you learn for model-driven apps, that means you are doing it for Dynamics 365 customer engagement also. Whether it's sales, it's field services, it's marketing, or it's customer service, or any custom app. So it will work. Okay, so in today's session, we are going to learn about the client API, which is available for model-driven apps, then client API object model. We'll see what is the execution context and form context. Then we'll have a little walkthrough on the sample client script. I'll try to cover as much as I can, but it's very hard to do in one session. Then we'll see how we can debug our JavaScript code. And then we'll see the docs, or the links to the documentation and practice, and we'll see what's coming next. One thing just to set the ground, as the Nan already checked for your JavaScript knowledge, the reason is, to be honest with you, this is not a JavaScript learning session. This is how we can use JavaScript for form interactions or to improve the user experience. So if you do not know JavaScript, that is something you have to definitely practice. But if you already know it, and even if you have a fair idea about it, that should be enough, because we are not going to do a very complex set of things in the JavaScript. The API that Microsoft provides is very easy to use. So if you know the basics, like how to declare a variable, just how to create the functions and conditions, so on, you can use it. Okay, so moving with our agenda, I'll just go to the first. What is client API for model-driven apps? So the client API, again, it's an API which provides interface to form controls, data, and events. So that means whatever controls we have on the forms, what are the controls that we have? We have the fields or columns, we call them. We have tabs, we have subgrades, we have sections. So this is something we can control using this API. So control means we can set a field's requirement level, a value, get its value, hide it, show a notification on that field. We can collapse a form or tab, we can hide a section, so on. And then we can also register our code on the form events. So there are three kind of events you will see, only three kinds. One is load. So this event is fired as soon as your form loads. That means if, let's say, on if you're on the account uh, uh, view or grid, you, as soon as you open account record, the load function will fire up. So anything you want to do, any logic where you want to set, you want it to run, will register it on the load event. Anything you want to register while the data is being saved or the user has hit the save button, will do that on the save. So that's our second event. The third is the column change or the field change. So as soon as a field value changes, we can fire up a certain Java piece of JavaScript that will do a certain logic. So in other words, it's very simple. We can attach JavaScript code to react to these events. So one of these, your code will always run based on one of these events. Okay. Okay. Then the client API object model. So the client, like in the people here, my friends who have already worked with JavaScript, they must be aware with the HTML and the DOM, the document object model, right? Similarly, client API also gives you an object model. So if I say in a normal web page, or at least say in the classic web page, we were able to get the controls, let's say a button, uh, using get form element ID, like kind of button, right? Where the DOM was providing you the functions to get control of your HTML controls. Similarly, in client API, we get an object model, which is in some way similar to the DOM, where you have a particular hierarchy. You can get the access to controls, get the access to the data in the controls, get the access of the form, the navigation, the subgrids, the quick view forms, and then you can, of course, control these based on your code. So what we can do with the client object model, we can, if I took at the examples, get or set a column value, show and hide user interface elements, just as I said, tab, section, quickie form, subgrids, columns. Then we can reference multiple controls per column. In some cases, we can add same field or same column multiple times. It will have multiple controls, so we can do that also. Or if you want to loop through the controls and do some logic, we can do that. We can access multiple forms, as I explained in my last video also, that we can have multiple forms, let's say for different teams on the same table. We can switch between these forms using JavaScript code. It could be any logic. Let's say if our customer type is B2B, we have a certain form. If user change the type to C2C, we switch it to the C2C form, which will have a different kind of layout or set of fields. So that is something we can do. We can play with the navigation items, and also we can interact with the business process flow. I'll show you what I mean by the business process flow control. Okay, so at the root of the client object model, there are I would say there are four important things we need to see. The first one, the last one I'll explain you first, the XRM. So XRM is a global object which will give you some functions on the global level, like UI, grid, subgrids, and controls. Now, if I come to the first one, execution context is the object that is, as soon as your event is fired, it receives the parameter as execution context from the model driven app, and it tells you which was uh, it gives you the all event details, like what event was fired, on which control it was fired. And then using execution context, you can get the form context. So the form context is the main object which we mostly will use, and this context will allow you to get the controls of the form, get the fields, their data, and do other stuff. Grid context is also something that on a form we can have a subgrid. So let's say on the account, if we have opportunities grid, we can get the grid context, so we can do functions on the grid also. We'll mostly focus in today's session on execution context and form context. Okay. Now, a little bit more on the execution context. So the execution context defines the event context in which your our code is being executed. So how we get the execution context? When we register our event, let's say we want, as soon as account name is changed, this particular JS function should be executed. So what we do is we go to that field, we say our function is available in this library, this is the function name, uh, call it, and please, if you see I have highlighted this under this orange box, we say pass execution context as first parameter. This means in our function the first parameter will be form context, so we can, so execution context, from that we can get the form context and play with the actual form. Okay. Then one more thing, of course, uh, we'll learn more about form context. So this is on the right side, you see this is the structure of the form context or the model of the form context. You see there are two major, it has two main, I would say, nodes: form context data and form context UI. Under UI we have all the controls related stuff. Then on the data side we have all the data related things available. Yeah, so the with the controls we can set, for example, what's the difference? If we want to set a visibility of a control, we will go from the UI path. But if you want to set the data in that field, let's say a particular value, we'll go, or get data, we'll go through the data part. So that means form context dot data or form context dot UI. And then if I, so all of these are collections, by the way. I mean, form context dot UI dot controls will give you all the controls collection, all the controls available on this form. Similarly, quick, anything you see in the gray is collection. Others are functions, or yeah. So yeah, like similarly, form context dot attributes will give you a list of all attributes available on the form with their data. And if you want to get the tab, we can either use form context dot UI dot tabs, and under tabs we have sections, and then under sections we have controls also. So that's how we go with it. Okay, right now I think let's get to the system and try to see and put everything in the context. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen here on the 365 Sales Hub model driven app. Let me open up the account form. Yeah, anyone. So just to give you a perspective, now this is the form. On this form, you can see there could be multiple, on this entity, there could be multiple forms. Right now, account state selected. If you want to switch between one of these forms programmatically, we have to use the library that we have discussed. We'll use the UI path there. Okay. Similarly, if you see the form is always divided into tabs. So summary, details, files, assets, and locations are tabs. Related is also a tab, but it's a system tab that we do not control or cannot control. This shows all the related or child records in it. Okay. Then under a tab we have multiple sections, like account information is a section, address is a section, timeline is a section. Then under section we have multiple controls or fields: account name, phone, fax, so on. So this is the overall structure to the form. Okay, now let me show you a very simple basic hello world kind of code in the Visual Studio. Okay, first thing first, of course you can choose any editor you would like to choose for your scripting. That's up to you. I'm using Visual Studio Code. Again, that's your choice. So how we structure our files or codes in Dynamics 365? First of all, there is no, I would say, hard and fast rule here. You can do as you want. You can do feature wise, but usually what I do in the practice, or mostly I've seen, is we go by entity. So for example, I've created already a file called account library. So that means anything or all the functions related to account will be available in this particular file. So in future also, if I need to add any new function, I will add in this particular file. Okay. But of course, this can change. If you're developing a product, this could be totally different scenario. But anyhow, this is the, I mean, good example. We do that. Okay, then this is as simple as you just create a .js file and then start writing your code. You can definitely write raw functions, but people who are here understand it's always recommended to use the namespaces, because this will allow this will don't this will help us to avoid any kind of conflict. So let's say if any other vendor or any other solution provider is also working on your system, and he has also used the same function called form on load, so this might conflict, right? So that's why it's always a good idea to use a particular namespace. This will help you to avoid any kind of conflicts. Okay, now if you look at this example, just forget about these things as of now. Main thing is I write a function, I call it form on load. It could be any name, and then as a first parameter I am taking execution contacts here. Okay, so in the execution contact, from execution context, I can get the form context like this. Execution context dot get form context. This gives me form context. Once I have the form contact, I can now play. I have the access to UI and that data we discussed about uh, functions, and I can just go ahead and use this. In this particular example, we are using form context to set a form notification. So it's a form level notification. We just show a message. What is that message? Your JavaScript code in action. So I've created these as global variables, and then that's what I show it on the form. And after the 5000 millisecond, I'm just hiding that. So if you see this in action, if I refresh this form, so this function has been registered on onload. I'll show you how it is registered on onload. You see, your JavaScript code is in action. It takes my name. So why it takes my name? Because I'm taking my name using xrm.utility.global context. So this is the other one I was talking about, where we can get a from global context, user settings, the name, the current app name, so some other settings also, the current app URL and all. So that is there in the xrm.utility.get global context. So I take my name, I just append it to a particular message and I show it. Okay, now how I registered this code, how it showed there. For that, we definitely start with the solution. For example, this particular solution which I've already created, I can recreate it. I will create another solution just for your understanding. And on the account entity, on this particular form, account form, I have registered this particular function. How? Okay, sorry, before that, more importantly, how you upload your JavaScript file or JavaScript code to Dynamics 365 or model driven app. For that, in the solution, we have something called web resources. So web resources are the files, HTML files, JavaScript files, your image files that you can upload and use it in the system for multiple things. So I've created an account file here, or web resource here, and named it account JavaScript library. The type of it is script, which is JavaScript, and I copy pasted the script from this file to here. And then I saved and published it. Publish is very important. Unless you publish it, this will not work. Then I went to the account form. Let me see if I open it. Yeah, it's already open. I go to the form properties here and add this like this. I search for my library and add it here. That's it. So this is how we add the code to the form. Now we need to tell our form how and when to execute this code. So I tell my form, okay, you can see on the form level, we have onload and on save events. So I go to the onload I say, okay, add this. For example, if I remove this for a minute, let me just copy the function name. So what we do is we say, okay, add, we choose our library and say, this is my function name. You remember this is because of the namespace. But if you're not using namespace, you can definitely just give form onload enabled. If unless it is enabled, it will not fire up. And then I say as a first parameter, pass the execution context. That's it. That's how the model driven apps come to know which function should be fired on a form on the load event. Now, if I publish it, we have to save and publish to see the changes. I will be able to see that particular function in action. Okay, now it should show up here for, yeah, like this. Then it will go because we are hiding it after a timeout. Okay, one thing you will notice here, if I go to the, let's say, the sales insights form, this script will not work at all. If you want to do that, what we have to do is we need to register the function or that form also. In the last session, I told you that in the solution, it's always the best practice to add whatever you need. So I will add, form here, existing form, add subcomponent. That was sales insights. And I will do very similar steps. I'll go to the form. So that means if you want your code to run on all forms, you have to register it on form. There is no way to register once for all forms. You have to do it one by one. The its name was new underscore account, I guess. Yeah, this library. Then I say add on the load, call this particular function, pass execution context. If I don't do that, my code will definitely break because execution context won't exist, and I'm calling a function, so it will give exception. Okay, now if I go, one more thing, whenever you do script change, it's better to do a hard refresh like control F5, or so it makes sure your recent code is loaded, because JavaScripts are usually cached, so it's possible. So you see this function on this particular form also. Okay. Now I'll do again uh, from scratch. Let's do this on for contact form. So what we'll do is I'll create another library called, again, the naming convention is just for a sample. You can use whatever you use in your company or in your projects. I will use this namespace. I'll just copy paste it. So and then let's take this function again, and I'll do something different now. Okay, so just to show you, this could be just on load also if you prefer that. I go to the form context and I just say, I mean, just to show you how simple it is, because in that example we're doing much more. Just say hello world, our typical example. I can, yeah, set notification timeout, which is fine. Okay, so now we do this on the contact form. For that, what I have to do is I have to create a new web resource because it's a different file. So I'll just go to the web resource node here. I'll say new. I'll give it a meaningful name. For me, it's contact lib is fine. Contact JS lib. Then I set the, you see there are multiple types: web pages, style sheets, scripts, then some image formats, then we have XML also. If you want to store some kind of configuration, you can do that. So anyhow, we'll just focus on script today, JavaScript. I choose file and then I do contact lib, this file I select and save. After save, I will publish it. Okay, you can definitely do a change here also using this text editor. Hello world D for dynamics. But I mean, it's not convenient in my opinion. It's always good to do in the JavaScript to avoid any kind of error. Because this is just a plain text editor. It won't show you any syntax error or any, even the orientation is not friendly. So I prefer copy pasting it from the actual editor. Then of course in your editor, this could be connected to your GitHub or any source control. So you will have your versioning also on these files. Okay, so it is published. Now I say go to the contact form. Okay, no form here, no problem. We'll go and add the existing form. I'm not going to create new. I'll take the global contact form, which is this one. Okay, I'll say form properties, add. I will select for my select library, and then I say add. What's my function name? It's for dynamics, and again pass execution context. Okay, save, and once it is saved, I'll do a publish. It's taking a while. Okay, done. Okay, now if I go, I'll just do a refresh and then go to contact. I'll open up a contact here. Okay, wow, very good. We have some error and it says the message is not defined. Very good, makes sense. Okay, it's good we saw that. So how to fix this? I know where is the issue. So I'll just go here. I'll show you how we debug this also. So let it cover. It's a good time to cover that. Okay, now we see, I know this message does not exist. So in my code, when I copied this particular function, I should have, sorry, this is just a notification number. It's required from Microsoft to give a notification number. Forget, actual message comes here. And message, because previously I was defining in the global, so it should be there. Now I can provide my message here. Hello world dynamic. Can go ahead and fix this. But let's say, I mean, this was pretty easy for me to understand, but how you will understand, or I'll show you another way to get details of that error. First of all, the pop-up that we saw is very limited with the information. You see, it's a one of the scripts for this code has an error. You say show details or say message is not defined, but still it is not yet clear. Then you can look at, of course, the event name. The event is on load, and this is this. So at least you get to know, okay, this is the function which is being failed. So you can just go ahead and do this. Another way is, of course, download the log file, which will have much more details or kind of trace where you can get to know what's happening. So I can say, okay, default download, this is something being failed. Okay. Even now, let's say, of course, you will go back in your code, look what you are doing in here and what is message, you will come to know what's happening. But even then, if you're not able to do that, there is another way. We can always debug it. How we debug it? Debugging is very simple. we just insert a breakpoint like this, debugger semicolon. If you do that, and I say, sorry, this has to come into my function. My function is being executed directly. Okay, so I say okay. I will save and publish this. Okay, now I will open up my developer tools, dev tools, by hitting the F12. I'll bring it here. Easy. Let me refresh. Now, if I refresh, it should go ahead and capture that breakpoint. Yeah, you see, now we are in our function. From now here, I can use, of course, F10 to go ahead and see what's happening. This looks good. You can always go ahead and understand. You can go to console and see other things. You can type here and say, uh, I'll do that example for you. For example, from my code, I can take this line. I'll just copy paste it in the console to see what does this line do. I can always do that. You see, it gives me that. And if I say user settings or give me the full object, I can look at the object. I can study this object, what's in there, so on. So I can either do this or I can go back to the my code. Minimize this. Second. 10 actually. 10 there. Yep, this one. So I can of course do F10 and see where my code is breaking. This will help me. So this is how you can debug it. But of course, this is not a recommended approach for your, no, I mean, this should not be pushed to production like this. You always should remove this debugger thing and then move it to production. That's a good idea. Okay, so now because I've fixed the code, I'll just go ahead and copy paste my updated code here in the web resource. Wait a minute. This is contact. Yep. Then I will save and publish. It's taking some time. Okay, publish. Done. Let me refresh my platform. I hope it will work this time. Here we go. Yeah. So, okay, this was just a global message. Now let's get to another example to get the field name. So on account, there is a sample code which I've, to be honest, I've copied it from the Microsoft official example because I thought it's good to explain a lot of things. So you see, this function is written to run on change. Again, this is just a name. It could be account on change, name on change, anything you can, whatever you like, you can give it a name. It also receives the execution context. We get it from form context out of it, and then we get the name of the account. That means if I go back to the account, let's say, I will get the name of this one. Now, if you notice, I say here form context dot get attribute dot name dot get value. So it gives me the value. But how I come to know this is the name I need to use? Please remember this is case sensitive. So you need to type it correctly. But how I get it? There are multiple ways, but the easiest is you go to the form. I'll close, sorry, contact form, and I'll just open up the account form. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I want to get this field name, I'll just double click on it or click and then change properties. I go to the details and here you see the name. So you have to use this exact name. If I open up any custom field here, let me see if we have any custom field. Let's say anything. Let's say this is KPI. And if I go ahead and check its name, it will be different, of course, with some prefix. So whatever is the name you get from the details tab, just take it and then use it. Yeah. So it's msdine.account. I can just copy paste it in my code. And another example, this is out of the box field or the built-in field. Here also I see telephone one. If I want to do anything with the telephone. So that's what we are doing. So we get the name. So the form context dot get attribute. I told you there are two mainstreams here. Form context dot data, form context dot UI. But if you notice, I'm not using either data or not using even UI. The reason is Microsoft has given this shorthand function, I would say. So you don't have to do full, you can do this way also. This is already available in the Microsoft's official documentation. So instead of using form context dot data dot attributes dot get attributes, I'm just saying form context dot get attributes. I provide a name of the attribute, physical name, we call it physical name, case sensitive in JavaScript. And we say get value. It gives me the value. Then I just convert it to lower case, again, just a JavaScript thing. I do a search, again, JavaScript save. If the name is D for dynamics, if I found it, the not equal to -1 because we find the index, right? So if it's not there, that's okay. I mean, if we've sorry, found it, then what we do is we go ahead and update the website to this, telephone to this. You see, instead of get value, now I'm doing set value, and then set the description also like this. So now if I go and register this function, remember this code I've already uploaded in the account library web resource. So I just need to register it because I'm not registered. So I'll go ahead. How I registered, this one is different. I'm not going to form properties. I've already added the lib. If I have not added the lib, I will definitely first add the libraries. That's how it will find that this is the library on this form. But this time I'm going to register it on this field. So I double click on it or just click and then change properties. Same thing. And like we get the name, we go to the events. Here we say on change of this particular column or field, call a function in my uh, library or my web resource with this name. This function is enabled and of course pass execution context as first parameters. I go ahead, save, and then publish. Okay, it's taking a while again. Fine. Okay, I guess it's published. I'll go ahead and refresh the form. And this time you will notice the code will not be executed because it's not registered on the load event. This particular function will not work in the load event. But if I change the name, it will fire up. Definitely. How? When I change and move out of this field, either press tab or click and on another field. I know it has been executed, but it didn't do anything because I had a um, condition. So if I type D for dynamics, that condition will meet, and I will say tab. You see, the phone is updated, the website is updated. Yeah, that's how it is. I mean, just one example. Of course, we can do a lot more here. Just it's not only about the uh, just setting up the field values. Okay. Another example I'll do is what I'll do is I'll hide this address tab for you. So for that, okay, I guess what we have to do is I'll just copy this up. Don't want. Yeah. Let me try this function. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, can you please form context dot get control and set its visibility. So what's the argument here? The argument will be the name of the control. So in this case, this is a section. I double click on this section or click and change properties. I get this name, not the label. This name is important. I take this. I say, okay, this is the form. Sorry, this is the section. Can you please go ahead and set its visibility to false? True means it will show. False mean it's true. There is a get visible function also if you want to first check what's the current state of this uh, yeah, control. So I'll go ahead, not the contact one. I need the web resource account, library, text editor here, this, okay. Again, I guess it takes some time. I will save and do a publish. And if everything is all right, it should work. Otherwise, we have to debug and see what's happening. Okay, let me change the name and see if this. Yeah, there is an issue. I think I have to use a different function. Okay. Anyhow, I mean this. I can of course go ahead and see what's happening, and there must be just some typing mistake or something in this case. But because we're less on time, I want to cover some more things. Okay. See, in this particular session, I can do a lot more. I can play with the tabs. I can play with the business process flow. What is business process flow? I wanted to show you. Let me open this up. You see, uh, there is a flow here that we'll discuss in some session. This flow, if I want to control its stages, this is again I can do with this particular library. As I said, I can play with the tabs, forms, visibility, and all that. But thing is, these are too many stuff. It's not I would say very easy to cover in one session or even in two sessions. So we have planned two sessions here. One was this one, other is advanced. In advanced, I want to cover more things like XRM, Web API. So the API means in that in JavaScript we can also get or query or create records using APIs. So I want to focus on that on the second section because that's another dimension. So now the point is how we learn this, because I want you to enable or just give you a way where you will simply learn it. For that, very this is available in the slides also, so slide will be shared with you, but I wanted to show you all. Simply go to client API reference. This link is provided in the slides, or if you want I can share again. So what happens here, this will give you, it's a beautiful documentation from Microsoft. You will get everything here. So what does it do, what are the events, then how to use those events. If you see, we have something called here okay, you can see what is available in each node, form context.ui, how to use. If I click on any of those, you will see a sample code here on most of the things. For example, here if I click get page context, they will share some sample code with you also, and there are this walkthrough is also available where you can go ahead and write your own code step by step, and you will learn to know how it works. Okay, so just come to this. So how you learn it? You just open up a particular form. You definitely need a trial or system for this. Just go to, let's say, lead form or contact form, and just make up any logic. Let's say you say, uh, I want to by default set mobile phone code to, let's say, +97 +92 +91 whatever. So you see, okay, this should be done on load of the form. So what I will do is I will register a JavaScript function on load and set its fields value to, if this field does not contain data, I can just set it to +92. Okay, so this will give you some scenario. You will learn it. You will see, okay, first step, how should I create a function? Second, how I can get this particular value. Then how I will check if it is null or not. If it is null, then how I can update this value. So this way you will learn. Second, you can come up, maybe you say, okay, in here if I select let's say food industry here, food and tobacco pressing or different anything, like let's say if I select this consulting, I want to show a new field here. So create a field, just show or hide that. Or if I select consulting, I want to make required that field. So these kind of things you need to do. Once you do it, play with different set of fields, how you get the text fields, how you do the date fields. Of course you use the same function, get value function, but the comparison will be different. Then there are hundreds of blogs out there where you can see all the functions, sample functions, how to set a text field value, how to set a currency, this is currency field, how to set a whole number field, how to set a lookup like this. Everything is available, which is very hard to cover in one session. So you have to learn it yourself. And at any time of point of time, sorry, you can come to me or Adnan, and if you're stuck somewhere, ask us and I will definitely try to help you out. So I guess if you just get the structure over here, that you need to create a web resource, register it on the form, either on load, on save, or on change based on your logic. How you Most of your work will be with setting the value, setting the visibility. If you learn those functions, you believe me, you have mostly done like 70-80% of JavaScripting with Dynamics 365 or model driven apps. Then in some scenarios you have to use XRM web API, which is very much required, and that we'll cover in the next session. So these two things I want to touch. Yeah. Now let me go back to the presentation and I'll finish quickly rest of the things and take your questions. So debugging, we saw how we can debug. So you just have to put the debugger breakpoint or debugger tag in your code where you want to add the breakpoint, use your browser's developer tools, mostly F12, and then do your debugging there. And yeah, for dogs and practice, this is this link I showed you. You can go ahead and learn this. Uh, yeah. If I think if I find some more useful links for you, I will drop in the WhatsApp chat or in the email. We'll see that. Uh, but this is very cause official. See, if you ask me, I'm a type of a person where I do not uh, memorize the scripts mostly. I'm syntaxes. So I always come here. Let's say if I want to set the visibility, I'll say set visible, and I'll go okay. Just search for it. How to use it? Okay, this form contacts or then set visibility. Similarly, if I want to do something with the subgrids, I will see okay how to do with that. So I just search it and use it. For example, today I needed to check how you can get the app name. The app is this one, Sales Hub. If I want to get that name on the form, uh, I can just say app name, I guess. Yeah, get current app name. You see, if I do this, it's very easy. I'll just go here. I can search. Okay, it will tell me this is the sample code. You get the global contacts using xrm.utility. Then global contacts would get current app name, and it will give you the app name. So similarly, build your scenarios and try to implement it. Wherever you stuck, just contact me, Adnan, or Google is your friend. One thing I know, I just want to quickly highlight what is XRM. You see it here, right? See, in the initial days of Dynamics 365, started working from version 4.0, that was 2009. So it was also known as XRM framework. So Microsoft was always called it as a development framework also, like you have entity framework, any other frameworks. This is also called XRM framework. So what is XRM? So X means any. That means any relationship management. So this is the system, especially the CRM was the system because its name was dynamic CRM in the previous days. But it was not only CRM. You could use it for any relationship mapping system. So for example, you can convert it to a vendor management system. You can do is as a partner management system, school management system, because it's that much capable. So that's why this XRM is being followed in still in the SDK, in the libraries, in the APIs. This pattern is still there. You will see in the custom codes also. So that's what XRM means. Okay, now let me go back to the presentation and quickly cover the rest of the slides. Okay, some considerations. Please do not use deprecated APIs and method, and these are also available in the docs are available. So there are some methods which were used in the previous version, which is still supported, but Microsoft says these are deprecated. That means in any future update, especially if you're on the cloud version of Dynamics 365 or the model driven app, that can break anytime with any new update. So avoid that. Then, of course, remove debugger for production environments. Avoid any unspotted methods. So, like you should always reside to what Microsoft Client API offers. For instance, if I come to this, I'm sorry, my CRM window will start here. Okay, let's say if I want to access this control, this sales hub or this nav bar, this is not available through the client API. I cannot do that. What could be the other method? Because this is just a, again, at then web page, I can go to the HTML DOM and do changes. Even if you're able to do, let's say you want to change this name programmatically or something, this is known as unspotted way of customization. So what does unspotted mean? This is Microsoft does not support it. It will work, but any future update can break it. Because for example, you will access is using an element ID. For now, you get the element ID by going to F12 developer tools, hover it, and it will give you some details, and you do it. But in the later release, and especially in the cloud, because releases happens automatically behind the scenes, this element ID could change. And if it is changed, your code will break. So then Microsoft does not take guarantee of that. And of course, it's not a good experience for users also. So avoid things like unsported methods, especially window.top, window.parent, like these are already suppressed methods, which means you won't even able to get it. But they're still, if you get a way to do this, it's not recommended. Then remove disabled customizations. I mean, if you are not using a particular function or something, you can always go ahead disable it, which so that enable check, right? We can disable it. And if it is not required, you can always remove it from the system also. Then this async part will cover in the next session when we will retrieve the data in real time or create the data in real time. Always do this async. There are ways to do this in sync, but it's not a good idea because it can take time and it's not a good experience. So if you do it async, there will be a event which will be, let's say, on success and on error, of course. So on success, you will get the data, then you can play with it. So this is one more thing. Yeah, so take home for today. Client API object model we saw for model driven apps. We saw the form events and execution context, which is very important to access all the controls and data inside the form. Then these are some learning resources. You'll get the copy of the presentation and you can go ahead and click on these and learn about these. These are very useful things. Let's call it the evening then. Thank you, Adnan. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Stay connected, please.